Hello, welcome to Jason the Millennial. My name is Jason, speaking to you here in my basement in the great state of Kansas. Today's video, I am reviewing a TV show from a British sitcom from the 70s. And this is due to a subscriber named Ryan Swales. He has a YouTube channel that's called Not Your Normal Geek. And he requested this review of this TV show because he came in second place on my predicting the Oscars contest this last year. And so he got the choice to pick a series for me to review, and he picked this television series, Fawlty Towers. Kind of a classic British sitcom, I suppose, of the 70s period with John Cleese at the start. So I was slightly aware of this show before, and there's only 12 episodes, so I got through the 12 episodes, and here I'm going to give my thoughts here on Jason the Old Millennial. So let's get to it. Hello, hope everybody's doing well here on late night, Wednesday night here for me. And yeah, I come here to review a TV show thanks to Ryan Swales. He has a YouTube channel, Not Your Normal Geek. Great channel, love the channel. Ryan, I've collaborated with him quite a few times on Did You See That channel with Mike. He gets on there quite a bit. We've done some movie reactions, in fact, and done some Z Talks together. And Ryan is one of the funniest guys I've ever got to work with on YouTube. Absolutely I'm always delighted when I get to collaborate with him because I know he's always going to make me laugh. But yeah, great channel, reviews movies, does a really great job. Has that microphone. He's gone out and asked people questions on the street before. I think he did this whole thing on like a video game store or whatever. What do you call it? Arcade, whatever. Like a classic arcade. He did a whole thing on. Yeah, so a lot of cool stuff on his channel. Hopefully I can get him on the channel someday. We can collaborate some more because I do enjoy collaborating with him. But yeah, so he got second place on my predicting the Oscars contest, and I was expecting, my idea was, okay, pick a series of movies and I'll watch the series, or a band and I can listen to all their albums like I do my deep dives on. That's normally what I do, but he kind of surprised me. He picked a TV show, which I wasn't thinking about, but I was like, all right, yeah, sure, I'll watch a TV show. And yeah, so he picked Fawlty Towers, which is I think a fairly well-known show, maybe in England. It's I say a classic show from them that you might catch on the BBC, at least here in America on the BBC, whatever. Yeah, so I'm sure it's a very popular series in England. Of course, it stars John Cleese, who's an absolutely hilarious actor. Started off with Monty Python. I know him quite well from the Monty Python movies, and of course the TV series as well. And and then of course he's been in a lot of movies. And I've always enjoyed John Cleese. I think he's an absolutely hilarious actor. One of my favorite coming out of Monty Python. You can look at like A Fish Called Wanda. He's great at. He was in The Great Muppet Caper in a small part. I remember growing up seeing him in that as well. He was in some Bond movies. He was in Harry Potter as well as Headless Nick. He's definitely one of those guys that's been around for a long time. Done so much great work. Yeah, and so Fawlty Towers, I'm somewhat familiar with the show. Funny thing, back when I was maybe a teenager, and my parents had like kind of cable or dish satellite or whatever, and I remember I think it was PBS, Public Broadcasting System, whatever. At nighttime, sometimes they would show old English shows, old British sitcoms, and I loved watching them. I actually really kind of enjoyed them because there's something about British humor and British shows that it was a little bit different than America, and there's something kind of charming about it because it just felt different. And so I'd watch them kind of more amused than anything else, like, oh, okay, this is how British do their sitcoms. It's just a little bit different. There was one show called Are You Being Served, which is probably my favorite. I used to watch it all the time. I think there was a show called like something about Mrs. Maple or something like that. I might be wrong. Of course, Mr. Bean, Blackadder, the Rowan Atkinson stuff. Rowan Atkinson was so funny. Um, and I'm sure there's some other ones I'm not thinking top of my mind, but Fawlty Towers was one that they would show sometimes. I remember maybe catching an episode here and there, like I said, when I was a teenager. And like I said, I always loved John Cleese at the time, so I was always amused to watch it. I don't remember a lot about it though, because that was a long time ago, my teenage years, 20 some years ago. And anyway, so I was kind of, when Ryan said Fawlty Towers, it's kind of, oh, okay, that's kind of a cool show to go back to. I kind of barely remember seeing it as a kid, some episodes. And so it'd be interesting how this holds up, so much years later. Anyway, so yeah, so I watched, there's only 12 episodes, 2 seasons. Interesting enough, season 1 came out in 1975. Season 2 comes out in 1979. So there's actually a 4-year gap in between the 2 seasons, which is quite odd. And quite odd that they're only, I don't know if this is a British thing. I feel like when I see British shows, they don't do, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like a lot of them don't have a lot of seasons. Like, it seems like they only do a couple seasons and they quit and move on. Unlike America, where American shows try to go 5 to 10 seasons long, a lot of times, at least. And it seems like they don't have as many episodes as I don't know what their system of, usually you have a contract of so many episodes, and evidently they only did 6 episodes a season. Well, back in the 90s, they used to have seasons that were 22, 24 episodes long. You'd have an episode every week for quite a while. Of course, nowadays in streaming, it's pretty common to only have 8 episode seasons, maybe 10 at the most. Seems like you don't get more than 10. And there are some that only get like 6 episodes for the season. So more common today than it was back then. So I was a little surprised that they didn't go more than 2 seasons. And Ryan, you can tell me how popular, if you know. Of course, this is before your time. This is before my time. If this was, I don't know what the popularity of the show was when it came out. Seems like it must have had some popularity to it because it had a big star in it, John Cleese. And he was coming right off of Monty Python at the time. So I can see that. Yeah, anyway, so getting to Fawlty Towers. So you basically have the whole, so from my research I did on the show, it was an idea by John Cleese when he was doing, I think, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, I believe. The cast was staying at this hotel, and the owner of the hotel, I guess, was kind of, I don't know, rude and not your normal, hotel manager. I guess something was a little bit odd about him. And Cleese kind of saw that and thought, wow, what an odd, hotel manager, the way he runs things and how he treats the guests, And his wife, whose name is Connie Booth, she also had a part in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. She was the woman who they claimed was a witch. Of course, she wasn't. And they had the whole bit in Holy Grail anyway. So she had a bit part in Holy Grail. And so I think she was there with him. And he kind of came up with this idea and brought it to her and said, so how about we write a sitcom kind of loosely based on this guy, hotel owner, and I'll play the hotel owner, and he'll be kind of rude and angry and yelling at people and not getting along with people and stuff like that, and kind of based the sitcom around that idea, hotel manager. And so this is okay. So they got together and they started writing episodes. So the show was basically created by him and his wife, Connie, who also is in the show. And so they kind of I believe they wrote all the episodes together. And then, got them brought to whoever, BBC or whatever, and got to make the show anyway. So yeah, called Fawlty Towers because that's the main guy named Basil Fawlty, played by John Cleese, is the owner of this inn, this small hotel, I guess, very small hotel called Fawlty Towers. And basically 4 characters. So he's running this hotel, and you get guests that come in each episode, and you have to deal with different situation with these different guests and stuff. Mainly, there's 4 characters really in the show. That so not a lot of characters. And it looks like the show was really like, it's done somewhat cheap. It seems like, I mean, most all this, everything's done at the hotel. There's maybe one episode or two that they maybe go outside the hotel, but for most part, they don't really go anywhere but stay at the hotel. The whole 30-minute show is done at the hotel. So not a lot, they didn't put a lot into having to do scout their location scouts and stuff like that. And I'm guessing it must be done in front of a live audience too. It looks almost like a stage play when you watch it. Almost feel like they staged it that way. Because you hear a lot of laughter and it sounds like maybe there's a live audience laughing at it. It doesn't sound like, maybe it's a laugh track, but it sounds more like a live audience situation. So it gives a different feel anyways, than I normally see in a TV show. Of course, that's how they usually shot things back then, I think. It's much different than what they do now. But yeah, so the four characters are Basil Fawlty, and then you have his wife, Sybil Fawlty, played by an actress named Prunella Scales. Then you have his wife, John Cleese's real wife, Connie Booth. She plays a character named Polly Sherman, who I guess is kind of like I said, there's not many employees at this hotel, so they kind of all have to do multiple tasks. She seems to be someone who maybe is a housekeeper, does most of the cleaning, clean the rooms and stuff like that, and does odds and ends in anyways that he relies on. And then you got another employee named Manuel, who's played by an actor named Andrew Sachs. And his whole character is that he's from Spain and he can't speak English very well. And he doesn't understand English very well. So that's his whole kind of shtick throughout the whole show, is that he has a hard time understanding Basil when he's telling him to do this or that. And he's kind of like a bellboy. He carries the luggage. But he also works in the dining room and delivers food from the chef. So that's kind of seems to be, and probably does odds and ends and, whatever needs to be done. So that's kind of his whole job in the show. Like I said, most of the show, you have like the main lobby and you have the dining room where they eat. Those seems to be the two most important, popular locations to shoot the show. I mean, he had the kitchen. So there's a chef, but he's not really a character in it that much. Then there's kind of another area, like people hang out and, drink, and there's like a bar and they just hang out and drink, I think. And then, of course, they go up the stairs, and that's where all the rooms are. And that's the basics of the hotel room, and that's all the scenes. Like I said, there's not many locations. Oh, they do go to a hospital. There's a couple times where they go to a hospital, maybe, and they shoot at the hospital. But for the most part, there's like only 4 rooms, maybe, you ever see in the show. Not a lot going on. In fact, a lot of stuff happens, and it feels like a lot happens in the kitchen now, I think, or the dining room area. People, a lot of comedy comes from ordering food and getting the wrong food or not liking what they're getting. And it's a lot about guests being very difficult, which I'm sure that is a case if you're in hotel management. You get a lot of difficult guests that, you can write a sitcom about because they make life much harder anyways. But yeah, that's the whole show, basically, is that. And you have like a different guests, like I said, come in because you have different guests come in. So you have different guest stars. Nobody big, though. In 12 episodes, there was like no big actor that I saw, which I was kind of surprised. I would thought they would had, like Eric Idle or Michael Palin, somebody from like Monty Python come in. That would have been kind of fun. If they could have done something like that, it might have made it a little bit better, but they don't quite get to anybody big that I know of anyways, from this time period. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting because, like I said, Cleese and Booth are married in real life, and they do that first season in 75. And anyway, it's interesting that he didn't put Connie in as his wife in the show. That would have made more sense somewhat. But maybe because him and his wife, him and the actress who plays his wife, they fight a lot. A lot of the comedy comes from him, from Basil and Sybil Fawlty, the two owners of this hotel. They constantly are fighting, bickering. That's kind of, and of course, if you know John Cleese, his kind of humor, he does get mad and yell a lot. Cleese is also a very physical comedian. Maybe the best part of the show is just his physical comedic. If you know him at all, he's so tall. He's like he looks like he's like 6'4" or something like that. And he's got long legs, and he's really good with physicality. If you've ever seen any of his Monty Python stuff, he does a lot of that here on the show. Sorry, my thing keeps shaking every time I move around. Um, yeah, and then there's a lot of him, like I said, a lot of humor comes from him yelling at Manuel. Like I said, Manuel, he has like a thick accent and he can't understand, and he keeps thinking Basil's saying the wrong thing, and he does the wrong thing, and then Basil gets mad at him again and yells at him again, and kind of physically abuses him at times. It kind of comes from a lot of the, of the humor of it all, anyways. And I would say, okay, get to like my positive and negatives of the show. I'd say my big positive, like I said, is John Cleese. John Cleese is so funny. He definitely has the best moments, and he goes on these big rants. And like I said, he kind of physically posing to other people, and he's always arguing with guests. Like he seems like the worst manager. Like I can't believe anybody. I wouldn't want to stay at this hotel if this is the way he treats. Constantly yelling and arguing with guests and all this, and doing strange things that are very questionable. And like I said, his physicality is funny. He definitely gets some of the best stuff. I'd say that's the best thing about the show. And then of course it's kind of like I said, as an American, it's kind of amusing to watch these British shows and kind of get on the humor and go, okay, this is interesting. This is a little bit different than what we do in America, and all that. So there's a charm and amusement to some of the humor here. Like I said, the negatives of the show for me is one, I didn't really laugh that much during the thing. It's not like watching Seinfeld or The Office or some of my favorite sitcoms where I'm constantly laughing. I think a lot of it is just that there's only four characters. There's only really usually one plot. They seem pretty thin on the plot. Like there's maybe one big plot that they kind of, it felt like they need more story, more plot through a lot of the episodes. And like I said, only 12 episodes. They feel like they didn't have enough time to really develop the show. I think maybe they need more time to develop the show. The show gets a little bit better as it goes on, I would say. I think second season's better than the first season, so I think maybe they just need more time. And like I said, they only did 2 seasons and 4 years apart, so they didn't really put a lot into the show like other like your big shows. But and like I said, there's not a lot of locations, not a lot of plot, not a lot of characters. So it feels like there's not a lot you can do with what they had. I mean, there's so much you can do with the same. We're in a hotel, something weird goes on. You got to do more. I think you need more characters in the show. I think you need more side plots. You have your A plot, your main plot, but then you need like a B and C plot that also, and then you need all the plots that come together at the end to kind of, have a satisfactory ending to each show. That's how normal sitcoms work. And I feel like this doesn't really do that very well. Like I said, they probably just need more time to develop all that, maybe get that working. Shows don't always work right away. You need some time to really figure it out, But yeah, and like I said, I feel like I wish they traveled to more locations, and all that. Anyways, that could have helped the show, I think, a little better than what it had. Yeah, and like I said, maybe because it's British humor, and so I always didn't get a joke here or there. And a lot of it, like I said, is just John Cleese just yelling at people. That's kind of a lot of the humor. There's a lot of laughing. Like I said, it was very distracting on the show when they would say something and then the audience would be laughing out loud like it was the funniest thing they ever heard. And I would be sitting there going, why are they laughing so hard? I remember always going, this is, very distracting because I didn't think what he said was that funny. The audience is laughing like it was the funniest thing. And so I was like, are they forced to laugh, or am I not getting the jokes? It was very weird. I wasn't particularly crazy about the constant laughing throughout the show. Anyways, I would say I got very tired of the whole Manuel not understanding English bit. At the beginning, it seemed like they really were. That was this whole thing, and it got old really quickly. The whole joke of like, okay, I get it. This guy doesn't speak good English, and Basil gets mad, and he tries to figure out ways to, either hand gestures or even write stuff down on paper to try to, get him to understand. And of course, a lot of the sitcom is miscommunication, which is pretty common. But so there's a lot of miscommunication of what people said or want, and that caused a lot of problems anyway. So you do get a lot there. I would say that I think got better as it went on. I think they kind of relied less on that whole joke there. And Manuel became like I said, second season, I think Manuel became, at first I wasn't crazy with Manuel. He was a little annoying. I think the character got better and was a little funnier in the second season, where he was doing a little more physical comedy, and he wasn't relying just on he can't understand English. And like I said, there's a lot of humor in the kitchen dining area of him getting orders but missing the order, and and customers getting upset. That's a lot of humor there with the Manuel character. Anyways, but yeah, so that's to me some of the criticisms I have of the show that kind of kept it from being better than it could have been. Anyways, yeah, so I would say it's not a show that I would probably go back to necessarily. It was okay for first time watch, just to kind of know, okay, now I know what Fawlty Towers is about. There's also kind of a funny bit at the very beginning of each show. They have the assigned Fawlty Towers, but somebody arranges the letters to spell funny words, which is a pretty clever way, because each episode is a different funny word that they rearrange the letters to. That was clever as well. Anyway, so saying that, I wanted to get to my 5 favorite episodes of the show and kind of talk about them a little bit to end this review. There's 5 episodes. These are the 5 of the 12 episodes I would say are worth watching if you have a chance. Number 5, I have Basil the Rat, season 2, episode 6. So this is the final season of the show. Final season is season 2. And so this is an episode where the food inspector comes, and that's always an issue in the show, is they're always worried about inspectors coming by, and something's wrong. And Basil's always, nervous about, inspectors coming in. And so it's all about this food inspector. He comes in, there's all these problems that they have to fix. And then he finds out Manuel has a pet rat, which he thinks is a hamster, I think, but it's a pet rat. And of course, the pet rat gets loose, and they're trying to get this rat before the inspector sees it. As you can tell, that's kind of, that's where all the humor comes from anyway. So that's number 5 on my list. Number 4 is the Hotel Inspector, season 1, episode 4. This is the first episode, because I would say the first 3 episodes, they really didn't know exactly what they were doing. It really wasn't, the plots weren't that funny. I think the show got better around episode 4 in season 1. I feel like they're coming up with a little bit better comedy plots. And this was the first one, yeah, I really thought had some funny moments in it. And it all comes from, again, he's expecting these hotel inspectors to come, but he doesn't know what they look like. And so he keeps thinking someone comes in, he thinks they're the hotel inspector, and so he tries to butter them up, but it turns out they're not, they're just a guest. But there's one guest who's super annoying. Throughout the whole show, nothing's good enough. He's always wanting more. He's always critical of everything, especially in the dining room. He doesn't think his food's cooked right, or it's not the right kind of food that he ordered. Something's not right with the alcohol drink that he orders. I don't know. He's just very difficult guest. And you can see Basil being frustrated throughout the whole show. And he wants to, tell this guy off and whatever. But he can't, because he thinks he's a hotel inspector, so he wants a good review. So he has this moment where he does call him an idiot or something like that, and he goes, "What'd you call me?" And he goes, "I was talking to this person." And he goes, "You were looking at me." And I go, "Yeah, that's what I do. I don't look at the person when I call him an idiot. What do you think?" Anyway, so Basil has these funny ideas of how he gets around, calling someone idiot and somehow backtracking, and he's good at that, talking people out of, oh, I didn't really say what you thought I said kind of attitude anyways. But it's funny at the end, this guest, he does frustrate this guest enough that the guest actually attacks Basil at the end and hits him. But he doesn't retort back because he thinks he's an inspector. So he lets him get beat up basically. But then he finds out that he's not the inspector. And so, as his guest is leaving, he has Manuel, kind of grab him, and he hits him with a pie, I think, and he takes his briefcase and like pours milk in it or something like that. Because he realized he's not an inspector, he's just a guest. So then he's like lets him have it basically, and then kicks him out of the hotel. And right when he does that, the real health inspector, or the real hotel inspector, comes in, and he doesn't realize that this is the hotel inspector because he comes in right before he does all this. And so he does all this to a guest right in front of the hotel inspector. He's physically abusing a guest, out of context with the hotel inspector. And so he does that, and he's very proud of himself, like, what he did. And he goes up and, hello, and then he finds out that the guy is actually the hotel inspector. I think he says, like, I'm the hotel inspector. And of course, he's, oh no, like, it was generally one of the funniest moments on the show that I laughed out loud. That, it's simple, but yeah, it works very well, because this idea of like, oh my gosh, like I just did all this stuff in front of this hotel inspector. Anyway, so yeah, that's number 4, the hotel inspectors. Number 3, I have The Germans, season 1, episode 6, which is a very interesting episode. This is usually considered by many, I think, to be their favorite episode from what I've done, or from what I've seen in the research. People seem to always really enjoy this one. It's interesting because it's all about some Germans come to the hotel, which, why is that a big deal? I don't know. It's always a weird thing. I'm like, who cares if it's German, something like that. But I guess this is kind of shortly after. This is not shortly, but I mean, you're talking about the 70s, so you're talking about, I guess there's still some tension after the World War II between Germans and English people, because they seemed almost kind of nervous about having these Germans come to the hotel. And they'll get into this whole World War II thing, in fact, which upsets the Germans. I guess they don't like to be reminded of World War II. But anyways, and it's interesting. It's an episode that's very controversial because there's some one of the characters, one of the guests, this major, I forget his major something. He's almost in every episode. He's like, I guess he's always a guest at the hotel, and so he has kind of a small part in the show. But it's kind of old, retired like military guy. And I guess he goes into a racist rant or something, but they cut that out. I think because I watched it, I don't think I saw that, but I think they usually cut it out of the streaming or something like that, because it's very controversial what he says or something. So, and it's usually one you can't find on streaming because they don't allow that because of the controversy. Anyways, but yeah, so it's an interesting episode because of that. It's hard to find in a sense, but it's funny, the Germans don't really come to play until the very end of the episode. It's weird that's called The Germans. Most of it is his wife is sick, or she's having an operation at the hospital. So they begin at the hospital, which is actually some funny moments. He's not very nice to the nurse and doctor there. In fact, someone says something about a doctor, and he goes, "Oh, they work here?" Like acting like like they don't really work very hard or something. I don't know. But yeah, so he has to run the hotel with his wife not being there, I guess, and like, this idea is like, oh, is he gonna be able to, do it by himself? I guess, of course, stuff happens, while his wife is in the hospital, and of course he doesn't want her to find out about it, and know that stuff is going on. And the funniest moment of the show, really, there's a couple, but one of the funniest ones is that he evidently bought like a big moose head, and he's going to put a moose head on the wall, and Manuel's helping him. And so he puts a moose on the wall, but I think, but before he does, it's on the counter. And so Manuel is like practicing his English or something like that. And so, and to nobody, just to himself, just saying like English phrases. And he's behind the moose head. And this guy, I was talking about, this old retired major guy, he walks by and he thinks the moose is talking to him. That's just Manuel behind it. And he's not like the smartest guy either, this major. And so it was pretty funny because he's answering him like he thinks the moose is talking to him. And then later in the show, not too much longer, they're putting this moose head on the wall, and the moose head falls and hits Basil in the head, actually, and causes like a concussion, and he has to go to the hospital. And so the moose head's like on the ground, and I think Manuel's laying next to it, and he's talking to somebody, and the guy walks by and thinks the moose is talking to this moose head. It was pretty clever the way they did it. That's probably the funniest moment of the show. But then Basil, he's not quite there because of the concussion, so he's not thinking right, and he escapes the hospital and goes back to the hotel when the doctor told him he needs to stay overnight. So he goes back to the hotel right when the Germans get there, and so as he's talking to the Germans, he keeps mentioning World War II stuff, which is upsetting them. Which I don't quite get that. That's supposed to be kind of comedy. It's like, why is World War II upset them? I don't know. Anyways, but he keeps talking about it. And then he has this one crazy moment where he's like trying to, well, one of the women start crying. He's like, why are you crying? And he thinks like, oh, I'm going to cheer him up. I'm going to do a impression. And I guess his go-to impression is Hitler. And even his wife's character, Polly, says to him, how about you do somebody else? And he goes, well, I don't know how to do anybody else. I bet I can do Hitler or whatever. So he puts his thumb like this to do the Hitler mustache. And then he does the goose walk, the Nazi goose walk. And it's the funny part is just his physicality of how he has these super long legs, and he's like, the legs are going really high in the air as he's doing the goose walk. And of course the Germans are going crazy, like, how dare you, That's probably one of the funniest gags of the show. Number 2, second favorite episode, is The Kipper and the Corpse, season 2, episode 4. Pretty funny premise overall, where one of his guests is in his hotel room, and he's asking for to bring breakfast to him in the bed. And so Basil goes up and brings him his breakfast tray, but he had died overnight, which Basil doesn't realize that this guy, he just died, kind of an old guy, but Basil doesn't. He's so I don't know when I say egotistic or all about himself, kind of guy, that he doesn't even, he's talking to him, and of course the guy's not answering back because he's dead, but he's trying to have this, talk to him and all this, and he goes away going, man, this guy was so rude. He didn't say thank you for his meal. He didn't talk to me. He thinks that this guy's being rude, but he's dead. Anyways, that's the joke. Anyways, and so he goes back, and he complains about this, whatever. And then Polly, I think, goes back up there to check on him, and she realizes right away, I guess something's wrong, and she takes his pulse, and he's dead. So she comes back, and he's dead, which Basil's like, what do you mean? I was just up there. And then it kind of dawns on him oh, that's why he didn't answer me, and he wasn't being rude. He was just dead. And he thinks he died because he ate some of their fish or something like that. And he goes up there to get rid of the fish, I think so he thinks maybe he died because of what he ate. So he's trying to get rid of that or something. I don't know. And then the doctor comes up and to check on him because there's a doctor there. It happens to be a guest or something like that. So he goes up to check on this, guest who's dead, and he starts asking questions, and Basil's being very, aloof about, or, very nervous, like he did something wrong and he's trying to cover something up. Pretty funny moment as well. But then they decide they need to get rid of like I said, it's called Kipper and the Corpse. So him and Manuel is trying to carry the body out of the hotel without other, guests seeing it, because that wouldn't be the greatest thing. So it's overall a pretty funny premise of them trying to hide this dead body or try to pretend that it's not dead, amongst these guests, because they don't want to upset the guests. So, yeah, and the fact there's some people there, I think, that are there to come visit him, and he has to, he doesn't want to tell them, I guess, what happened right away. And anyway, so very funny premise, I think. A lot of comedy gags with the dead body, I thought. So that's why it's number 2 on my list. The number 1, to me, by far the best episode was The Psychiatrist, season 2, episode 2. This is definitely the best written episode. This is one episode where I was like, okay, this is what they should be doing for each episode. This is what I like about sitcoms, or this is the way you write a sitcom. And that is, they had multiple characters in the episode. They had multiple plot lines going all at once, and they all kind of came together at the end in a satisfactory way. Like I said, they did a very good job with this episode, because what you had is the psychiatrist refers to, there's this couple, and I think one of them's a psychiatrist, and Sybil Fawlty is talking to them and having a conversation about them, And then Basil doesn't know this, and he finds out he's a psychiatrist, and so he's very nervous about talking to this guy because he doesn't want to be psychoanalyzed or something like that. And he keeps telling his wife, don't tell him anything, like you should be afraid to talk to a psychiatrist anyway. So it's kind of this whole thing. And so, and he thinks they're all kind of, weird or something, like, Freud, like Sigmund Freud or something. There's one funny moment where the guy is talking to Sybil, and then when he doesn't hear the conversation, Basil comes in and he asks Basil a question like, how many times a week or something like that. And Basil in his mind thinking he's asked him how many times does he have sex with his wife or something like that, because he thinks that's what psychiatrists, talk about a lot. And so he says like, 2-3 times a week or something like that. And the guy's like, really, that much? And he goes, well, yeah, I think I do pretty good. And so it's one of those funny miscommunication parts where Basil doesn't realize what he's talking about and all this anyway. So that's a good moment. But then that's not the main plot. The main plot really is there's a kind of younger, good-looking guy who's staying at the hotel, and he's talking to, I think, to Polly, and that he's wants to bring his mother. His mother's going to come visit, so he wants a bed in there for his mother or something like that, because he wants his mother to stay there at the hotel with him or something like that. Anyway, Basil, of course, seeing that he's like this kind of playboy, good-looking guy, thinks that he's going to bring a girl into the room, and evidently, because this is the 70s, like he's against non-married couples being in a room together, or and so he's always very old-fashioned, I guess, that way. So he's trying to catch him with this girl constantly throughout the show, not knowing that it's his mother that's staying with him. So that's part of the miscommunication comedy. And then there's a really attractive woman that's next to the guy's room. And so he keeps going into the attractive woman's room in order to spy on the guy next door, like to listen at the wall, or something. Or and so his wife keeps catching him in this attractive woman's room, of course, and thinks he's like trying to peep on her or something. And he tries to explain himself. Anyways, and he's like, I'm just trying to, spy on this other guy, and his wife doesn't believe it, and so she's mad at him. He keeps getting in trouble, and there's one moment where he gets on a ladder outside the hotel room, and to peek through the room to catch this guy with another girl, but he accidentally goes into the wrong hotel window, and he looks through the window of the attractive female, which again the wife catches him, which looks really bad. You're peeping on your own, guest through the window, very, illegal. And so she's mad at him. He's like, I don't understand why you're mad at me. Like he doesn't quite get it. And so the funniest moment probably in the whole series, him and Emmanuel's there when she really lets into him. And then he's talking to Emmanuel. He's like, I don't understand why she's upset. I'm just trying to catch this guy and all this, and Manuel keeps going, she went crazy. And it's so funny. I don't know why. It just made me laugh the way Manuel says that. She went crazy. He keeps repeating that word anyways. And he's like, yeah, I know. She went crazy. And then it dawns on him what he did wrong. And it's a very funny moment where he's like, oh, no, I'm the bad guy here. And then he has to try to apologize to his wife and, all of that. And then at the end, he finally comes to that door of this guy, and says, who do you have there with you? And you have a woman there with you? He goes, yeah, I do. And he goes, and you want to see her. And so his mom comes up, and it's an old woman. And he's like, okay, that's all. I wasn't expecting an old woman. And then when he finds out it's his mother, and he's like, oh, okay. So I did all this for nothing, and now my wife won't talk to me. And that's kind of the show ends anyways. But it's very funny how all those, and the psychiatrist also, I think the psychiatrist walks in at one point when all this happens. Anyway, so it's very well written, the way it ends with all the characters coming together. And very funny miscommunication ideas and stuff like that, like I said. Very done well. I think that's, to me, if you want to watch one episode, watch The Psychiatrist. I think very funny episode, done very well anyway. So overall, I would say, yeah, it's not my favorite sitcom by far. Not to be overly critical. I know, Ryan, you love the show, so definitely comment what your favorite episodes or what you like about the show, what maybe I missed about it. I would love to hear your thoughts, especially since you're a fan of the show. Yeah, to me, I'd give it like 2.5 stars. I'd give it a light not recommend. It's not a show I can say you must go out and see this show. It's not one of the funniest shows I've seen. But it's, like I said, there's a couple episodes that are worthwhile to watch if you ever catch it on TV anyways. But that's my 2 cents on Fawlty Towers, the British sitcom. I should say the second season, it's interesting. First season, he's married to Connie Booth. I think second season, they're getting divorced in real life. So a lot's happened between the first 2 seasons. And so that's probably why the show didn't go on, I'm guessing, because those two probably didn't want to work together anymore. That'd be my guess. It would have been interesting if they could have kept going. Of course, they shouldn't wait 4 years between seasons either, but maybe the show could have been something. Like I said, if they had kept going and developed the show more. Like I said, Cleese is a very funny guy, so they had something there. But anyways, that's what I think. Please comment what you think. Have you ever heard of Fawlty Towers? What are your thoughts? Love to read your comments. Besides that, thank you for watching this pretty long video, but it's a lot to talk about on the show. And thank you so much to Ryan for being so supportive. I really appreciate you, Ryan, for being super supportive of the channel and commenting on my show, on my episodes, and being in the Oscar prediction contest. I appreciate people that do that, anyways. And so definitely everybody check out and subscribe to Not Your Normal Geek. Very great show. Anyways, besides that, thank you to everybody else watching this and liking it, and thank you to all the other subscribers for supporting the channel. You guys have been great. I really appreciate y'all. Hope you have a good day.